Friendship. Can I relax and be myself? There's a lot of different layers of friendship, and what we're all looking for is the deeper experience. Romantic partnerships, family relationships, work, all of these different places where we meet people, neighbors, colleagues. Some of those friendships are more like warm acquaintances where we meet someone and we have a bit of a spark there of, oh, I'm kind of interested in getting to know them a little bit more. There's something about them that feels safe to us and kind of interesting. And of course, that's not often the case. Our relationships and our interactions with people are a bit more fraught. And a lot of that is because of our nervous system and their nervous system. And we live in a time when there's a lot of social anxiety, there's a lot of real threat, there's a lot of division, there's a lot of fear mongering. It's a practice to come into our own nervous system regulation. And then also, our nervous system is so committed to keeping us safe that we often overprotect ourselves. Or we go into kind of a freeze and we ignore the danger that's here. So I think the key to almost everything in life, and certainly our relationships of all kinds, is to have a regulated nervous system. So we're not in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn as much as possible. That's not perfect for any of us. We all have movement along that. But as much as we can be more settled and see, have more accurate neuroception, more accurate perception of, am I safe right now? How safe am I? Is this person a danger? I feel kind of anxious around them. Why is that? The more information we have about this, I think, the better. Let's work and kind of sense into lower vigilance relationships. So these are people who are fun to be around. We trust them. Generally speaking, they're probably fairly well regulated. We all have times when we're not, when we're activated about something. But it's hard to be in a really close connection with somebody who's in a survival response. When we think about lower vigilance relationships, we're really thinking about people who have our nervous system is fairly regulated, but also that we can be a little bit more regulated around them. They don't alarm us. So, what is the evidence? A lot of it is we have this shared experience over time. When we're talking with them, for instance, we have a sense that they're interested in us, that they want the best for us, that they're on our side, we're on their side, and we just kind of relax. When I was a child, I had some friendships that were really no vigilance. There was no worry or anxiety there. We just clicked. And one friend in particular, we laid on the bed for hours listening to Beatles records. So we have those experiences, and probably most of us have had at least some. And it might go back to childhood when we can think of someone that we consistently were relaxed around, we had fun with. We can breathe and we laugh. If we have a sense of humor, it tends to be more active with someone with lower vigilance. Then we go into these higher vigilance relationships. And just to say that as we're looking into this, it's kind of information gathering. It's not that someone who we feel higher vigilance around is a bad person or that we need to never see them again. It's not that. We're just really looking into what is our experience with different people. And of course, we are more guarded when we're in a higher vigilance state, for sure. So sometimes it's that when we think about them or we think about seeing them, we feel a bit on edge. We start to notice our shoulders up around our ears. When we're with them, especially if it's somebody who has a lot of fight response, we never know what to expect from them. So we might be walking on eggshells around them. It might come out as we share something and then they kind of make fun of us. It might not be that they're yelling. There might be other ways that we'd feel uncomfortable around them. We tend to not be as funny because we're on edge. We're not really sitting back, noticing. Unless it's a sense of humor that's sharp and a little bit mean, that tends to be a little bit higher in some people when there's a higher vigilance there. We have a harder time connecting with them because we're protecting ourselves. Even if it's going pretty well, we wait for the other shoe to drop because it has dropped in the past. Unfortunately, and a bit unfair as well, we are so highly associative in our mind and our nervous system that if somebody's tone of voice or their body language reminds us of somebody who we have to be higher vigilance around, we will also usually apply that to these new people as well. And sometimes that's a good thing that we don't have to learn these lessons of who to trust and who not to each time. But it is something that we could be aware of. Who comes to mind for you when you think about a higher vigilance relationship? Notice your body might be a little bit different. When we think about people who we can relax around, our body tends to be softer, we breathe easier, we feel more engaged, we're not on alert and on protective mode. As adults, we have a lot of different experiences with relationships. So just because there's a higher level of vigilance there doesn't mean that it's a no-go, that we're going to put them out of our life. Sometimes it's somebody we really love who's not well regulated. It might be for lots of different reasons. One of my nephews had a brain injury and he was not well regulated. He was difficult to be with. And I loved him and I also was happily with him. Something like that's going on. Or maybe somebody just has a lot of trauma and they tend to not be well regulated. There's enough there that we want to stay in connection with them. We want to not fool ourselves, though. Sometimes when we're around people, we really do need to be well rested, alert, not kind of pretending that everything's okay, because then we can just fall into the trap of maybe being gaslit or internalizing core deficiency beliefs. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am boring. So we do need to be alert to how we're feeling around people. We're not pretending that everything's okay. And it might be somebody that we don't really have a lot of choice around. Like someone has a new partner and you don't agree with that new partner. You feel the partner is harmful or abusive. This is a really close friend or a family member. So how does that affect your friendship with that person? I've had this experience of someone joining a social circle who was actively trying to exclude me, jealous, and wanted to get me out of that circle. So they were a danger that I didn't really realize at the time. I was usually pretty checked out, but that it would have been very helpful for me to know. And I think this is true for everybody. And I also think it's really true for people who are doing a lot of personal growth work. We've changed, and the old patterns, old friends don't feel as interesting, or also maybe not as safe. Maybe if you're in a family, for instance, there was a lot of teasing in that family, but it was pretty mean spirited. And I know some social circles are like that as well. So maybe you've gotten to the point where you're like, I actually don't want to be involved in that anymore. So we have these decisions. It's not necessarily I'm going to leave them all behind, but it might be setting a different boundary or just to be aware of it, though. There's a lot of factors involved here. So this seems a little cold and analytical. What do I get from this? What does it cost me? Just to look at it as an inquiry. Let's take a little bit of time with this. Let yourself kind of settle back and be aware of your body, your breath. So we're looking into how we make decisions about friendships, why we're staying. Am I staying in this friendship because I really enjoy being with them? Am I kind of ambivalent? It's like, well, when I think about them, I have this pit of ickiness in my stomach. I'm feeling kind of ambivalent. Is it healthy for me? Am I codependent? Am I trying to fix them? Are they trying to fix me? So let's kind of sit with whoever comes to mind. The more specific, the better, usually with this kind of inquiry. And do they feel safe as you're thinking about them to be in relationship with them? And sometimes it's a clear no. I've been in this relationship a long time. I'm really recognizing that they are abusive in some way or harmful or maybe just not healthy. And I actually do need to get out of this relationship somehow. Part of our answer to this depends on our strength and resilience. When we're not feeling very strong, it's more of a threat to be around someone who's not all that good for us. Maybe they'll say something that's a bit shaming, and we're just like, I'm not even going to let that bother me because I know that's not true. But other times we're more vulnerable. But as you're thinking about that person, what is your level of strength and resilience right now? How much will it cost you to be in a relationship with them? And am I pretending to myself? So if they're not treating me well, or even if they're treating me okay, but I'm just not interested in pursuing a deeper friendship, what do I owe somebody? And this, again, is not a clear answer often. This is my mother I'm talking about. So I owe more to her than I owe to my neighbor. But if we're looking at it more of a friendship basis, we could be friends with this person or not, or we could bring them in closer, or we could put them at more of a distance. So maybe it's somebody who has a lot of dysregulation and really counts on us because they just discharge their trauma on us all the time. And it costs us something. Am I being realistic about can they change? Do they want to change? Maybe this is really working for them. What do I owe somebody? Let's stay with that for several breaths, several intentional breaths. What do I owe somebody? And if I had other friendships that were rich and rewarding, would my decision about that person be different? So sometimes it's like, well, it's better than nothing. At least I have someone to go to the movies with, or at least I have someone to call and go for a walk with. That's not a very healthy answer sometimes, but sometimes that is what it is. I don't want to have my expectations of somebody so high that I'm always alone. How much is that fear of being alone or isolating? How much does that come into this decision? And we don't need to shame ourselves for that. We all have some variety of that. So as you're considering some of these, let yourself be in your body, notice your breath. And there might be a lot of different things that are coming up. And let's go right into the inquiry here. Safe enough relationships. Let's take a few breaths, kind of reset the stage, so to speak, after that question around how am I making these decisions? What are the factors? Take a few breaths, maybe open your eyes if you've got them closed, look around the room. Now we're going to bring to mind someone that we do feel safe with or safe enough with. Nobody is perfectly attuned all the time. Nobody is always really available for us, but someone we feel pretty safe with. And what are your experiences with them? We'll give this a couple minutes. Memories, images. What do you do with them? How do you feel? It might be someone that's in your life right now. It might be someone who's not in your life anymore for any number of reasons. Let yourself really settle in. Let your breath be soft, your shoulders release, your jaw relax. Might be a group of friends or one in particular. And then go to someone who keeps you on edge. We're looking into not making a change right away, probably. It's just an inquiry. Looking into this friendship and the connection. Does it make sense based on how they treat you, based on some of the factors we were looking at a moment ago? How do you feel with them? Reverse inquiry is something that we would wish to be true, and we know that it's probably not completely true. But we're just looking to see what are some of the unconscious thoughts around this. I can afford to be myself in this relationship. Let's sit with this for a minute. What does that feel like in your body? Sensations, energy, what happened to your breath? And what's coming up for emotions? Maybe it's someone you used to feel really close to and something's changed. There might be grief or shame or fear, loneliness. I really miss them. I really miss being able to just be relaxed around them. They've gotten to be so edgy. And now, this last few years, maybe since COVID, we feel just like we're so different. We keep stumbling into these hard things. I don't really feel like I can be myself anymore. Or maybe the answer is more positive. Maybe it's, I really do feel like I could be myself and be vulnerable with this person. What does that feel like in your body? I can afford to be myself. Or maybe they're not going to respond well, but I can still afford to be myself. It's worth it to me now. I feel strong enough that I can say, this is how I feel about that. I can afford to be more honest and show up. And part of the subtext here is, can I afford to be in relationship with myself? Can I afford to see myself clearly with kindness? So, this relationship that we form with others is kind of secondary to the relationship that we have with ourselves in some way. Although it's very complex, this interweaving of our own inner workings and other people. The word deserve can be a little bit activating for some people. But how do you feel about that? I deserve friends who care, are interested in me, and treat me with kindness and respect. And in turn, I will be that kind of friend for them. Not a one-way street. My friends, I care about them, I'm interested in them, and I treat them with kindness and respect. And the friends I value, the friends I'm wanting to cultivate more, are people who care about me. We have a dialogue, they don't monologue all the time. And they treat me with kindness and respect. What does that feel like right now in your body? Maybe take a few deep breaths. Really notice if your inner critic has come in there and said, well, blah, 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 whatever it is. We don't have to be perfect. When you think about the way you are a friend to someone else, you're thinking about, well, actually, the last 3 times we've talked, I haven't actually asked them how they are, other than kind of a opening, how are you? I'm so wrapped up in my own stuff right now that I'm not really a good friend to them. So something like that might be true, but we want to be not shaming ourselves. The same with when we're looking at somebody who's a friend and we're really noticing there are some things that I'm not really happy about. And I wouldn't want to be in this friendship if that happened all the time. So, without being harsh or condemning someone for their nervous system, which is usually what's at the base of this, we just sit with that. I do want to have friends who care, and I want to be that kind of friend, that there's a kindness and respect here in our relationship. Let yourself feel that all the way through your whole mind, body. Notice your thoughts, your breath. Let your body relax, maybe move it around a little bit. So there's a lot in what we've just been working with, and none of it's neutral. We have a lot of emotion and feeling about our friends and ourself in friendships. Over the next minute or so, we're going to wrap up the inquiry. Now, as you're doing that, let's just see about being here with ourselves with some kindness for a moment again. In my friendship with myself, I set a foundation of care, kindness, and respect. And with that foundation, I'm able to interact with others and that I don't have to be perfect at it. Neither do they. I'm just exploring some of the factors, some of the nuances of friendship. I can afford to be myself in this relationship.